The 49ers, Chargers, Dolphins, Jags, Washington football team, Bengals, and Colts have one thing in common with each other. They are set to possibly have in excess of $50 million in cap space entering the 2022 NFL season. However, the Eagles on their own can have in excess of $30 million if they choose so to plan on making these 5 moves to create some space. Yes, Bird brothers and sisters, what is going on, everybody? Lindy Endzone in the building for the touchdown, taking the lead for the Philadelphia Eagles, one video at a time, and dropping buckets for the Dallas Mavericks, who tonight are without my boy Luka, as he still nurses some injuries and ankle irritation against the OKC Thunder, and a Luka-less Mavs should be able to handle that team. The Lakers weren't able to do so, I think, almost twice. But, nonetheless, that's not the here nor there. We're going to get into it quick here, but before we do, if y'all like the diversity of fandom that I bring to the table, I'd love to have you a part of the Endzone family. The only way you could do that to achieve that goal is to hit the subscribe, drop some likes to help out with the algorithm, but of course it's based on what I give you as far as a basis of my channel performance. And if you don't got that notification bell rung yet, that lets you know when I drop my next piece. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen, Bird brothers and sisters. 2022 is going to be interesting for Philly, and with the help of a article that I have posted up here that I'm going to be reading off. Credit to Glenn Irby for the Eagles Wire in creating this article. I wanted to read some of these off here and get your input on what you think about the potential decisions the Eagles could do in stretching their potential of cap space going into 2022, analyzing that along with the consideration of the amount of draft picks that we have, and so on and so forth. So we are going to start off with number one, and I think that's going to be one of the more popular questions to start off with, which is a extension for Darius Slay. Big play Slay in the building. And for the incredible season that he has had, despite the rookiness of Jonathan Gannon as a first-time defensive coordinator, Slay appears to be having a Pro Bowl, All-Pro-esque season at 31 years old, and despite the lingeries, there you go. Despite the injuries that don't seem to, really want to leave him alone, whether it was a re-aggravation of a hamstring, concussion, ankle, despite all that, and despite the situation of Jonathan Gannon as, looking like a rookie defensive coordinator, to play the way that he is pretty darn good. It's pretty darn good, to say the least, in a secondary room that does not have a lot of promise and a lot of talent, dare I say, outside of Avonte Maddox. Steve Nelson is serviceable for what he is. I don't know if you would rather Jalen Mills or Ronald Darby to this point, but that's, it's not saying a whole lot, especially that, we have, Tay Gowan, Kerry Vincent Jr. Um, um, who else am I thinking of here? He just Zach McPherson, excuse me. He almost left my mind. So I mean, between the three of those guys and that they're not ready yet, everything else in consideration, depending on how free agency looks, you may not have very many options, especially for keeping somebody as good as Slay has been in this system defensively that's still growing, despite the unpopular opinion that is Jonathan Gannon. Slay has played unbelievable this year, and if you end up if you end up coming to terms with an extension for him, you can save almost $12.5 million in cap if you give that on a pro rate and spread it out through another extension of maybe 2 to 3 years. I think that would be fair to Slay. He's earned it for the city of Philly, playing the way that he's been, and that's one consideration. That's one choice that we have, to think about going into next year. Number two. And number two is going to follow a lot of more veteran. It's still going to go down the veteran tree here, but these are, for some, these are going to be tough decisions, and for others, it's going to be a simple decision just when you put age and availability into the conversation, and that would be cutting Brandon Brooks and Isaac Seumalo. Now, if it were me, the difficulty with this would be increased had the Eagles not have had the offensive line depth that they do right now. With Landon Dickerson on the rise, Jack Driscoll is looking like a very promising player. If he can only ever stay healthy, his luck has been terrible as of late, and not being able to stay on the field with ticky-tack stuff, and whether it's an ankle or a knee irritation. He had a concussion at one point, I think in 2020, that kept him out for a little bit. But nonetheless, I think it would be hard to really come to an easier choice in letting guys like this go. Again, Seumalo's not that old himself. I think he's only about, I want to say Isaac is only about 28. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure he's only in his late 20s. So it's not exactly that old for an offensive lineman. We know how good Isaac is when he's on the field. The O-line itself doesn't miss a beat. But credit to these young kids. Credit to these young guys coming up and really solidifying the trenches to where, we don't miss these guys. We don't miss these guys that are hurt. So between Brooks and Isaac, Brooks himself, you're looking at a dead money hit of about $6 million, but in cap savings, it's 13.5. And if he wants to come back, as long as the release date is post June 1st, you can try and bring him back on a less costly deal if he so chooses. And at this point it feels fair just because of the consideration and because of the consistency of him staying off the field because of these injuries. And so those are two other things that could help us in cap. Isaac himself brings in almost $6 million in savings. So while they may be difficult to some, to others, that may not be the case. And it's going to only help us later down the road. Number three, I think, is an easy one for a lot of us. Letting Derek Barnett enter free agency. That fifth-year option was a hard pill to swallow, I think, for every Eagles fan. And if you could have predicted the future and told me that Brandon Graham was going to go down with an Achilles, I still don't think it would have changed my mind in bringing back Barnett on a $10 million fifth-year option because ultimately he hasn't performed to that kind of bar in terms of money. He just hasn't. For a first-round pick with the aura that was behind him and breaking Reggie White's sack record at the University of Tennessee. There's just the expectation laid upon him. He has come nowhere close to what he was supposed to be for this defense as a cog in the system and hopefully developing into a reliable starter. It just wasn't there. So if you end up allowing him to walk, that's a cap savings of a little over $7 million. So, I mean, that would be, for the Eagles at that point, it would be huge. But this would have to be and I have a feeling that this is going to be a situation where all eyes are going to be on Howie Roseman, and where is his ego going to carry him? Is he going to be able to let go of a first round pick that easily that has underperformed to the way Derek does, or just thinking of whether he can swallow his pride or not and just admit that this was a bad pick. So that's what's going to come out of that one. But I think for the most part, that would be an easy decision for most Eagles fans. And the last one we have talked about in the past before, especially with the difficulty in him staying on the field, with injury concerns, and then that so coveted battle between him and Jordan Mailata in all of camp in the offseason. The next one is about trading Andre Dillard. Yeah, another first round selection. But in the case of that, the cap savings isn't a whole lot. Does it allow you to bring somebody in on a vet minimum kind of deal? Absolutely, because the cap savings is over $2 million. And with that said, I mean, the Eagles just extended LaRaven Clark, a more experienced guy to fit in the trenches. Especially the familiarity that he has through the Colts and Sirianni, and coming over here in this system, he may be a better fit offensively along that line to what Sirianni wants to do as an offense. And being that Dillard's not really getting a whole lot of time right now on the field because he's Jordan Mailata is looking like a Pro Bowler, and the lack of versatility that Andre struggles with, that's where a guy like LaRaven Clark can easily come in and take his place. But at the end of the day, that's going to be, that's still up to Andre and working with Jeff Stoutland. But to this point, it doesn't seem that there's any hope left. So I think, like the Derek Barnett situation, I think this last one here with Andre Dillard is another simple one, for Eagles fans to be in agreement with. But with that said, that concludes the list. So breaking it down, everybody, let me know what you think in the comments on every consideration the Eagles could do in order to save cap space and put themselves in a better position going forward to building a reliable and healthy team around the quarterback, the head coach, and everybody else involved in order for us to get back to a successful atmosphere in reaching deep playoff runs. With that said, I thank you for reaching the end of the video with me. And well, that's gonna do it for myself, Lindy. Fly Eagles fly, bleed green. Go Mavs, MFFLs. Having a hard time speaking. That's twice in this video. But take care of yourselves, everyone. See you soon, and have a good night.